Good evening, White Sox fans. Welcome to another edition of the FutureSox podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge. Joining me this evening is Mr. James Fox. How are you, James?
I'm good, dude. What's going on?
Not a whole lot. Feeling a lot better. Had
Yeah.
COVID all week.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, not fun.
He went to the American South. I told you, It's,
Yeah, I think I got it. I think I got it at the Buc-ee's.
yeah.
Go to the truck stop, and there's just people everywhere,
Yeah.
and there's people coughing.
Yeah.
So I probably got it there.
You know what I'd never done before, and I didn't talk about it. Like when we just went to the East Coast with my family, we went to a Sheetz and a Wawa.
Mm,
That's like a thing there, like where they're just like upscale 7-Elevens basically, but like people
yeah.
like literally like go in there and eat. So I couldn't really tell the difference. But I remember like athletes have come into town and radio hosts are like, "Hey, are you a Sheets guy or a Wawa guy?" And it's kind of just like a thing. I don't know. I would go in there and get a Pepsi or whatever. But people were eating chicken wings in Wawa.
I mean, I'm listening, but the Cannonballers are in extras right now, and a guy just singled up the middle with 2 outs and a guy on second. The guy from second for the Fireflies comes around home, gets thrown out at home. So we go on to the 9th inning. Awesome.
Who threw him out?
Let me look here right quick. I forget who's playing center field right now. It is Albertson Asegan.
All right.
Yeah.
It was not Alvaro Aguero.
No, yeah, it was not. He got
he was
relieved.
the latest Marco Patti defector from the organization.
Yeah. Actually I was kind of surprised. I'd seen that guy make some amazing catches out in center field.
Yeah.
And the bat was lagging a little bit.
Yeah, like the WRC Plus was pretty good, but it's like no homers and it's a lot of Ks and no walks. So there's just not enough room in organizations anymore for guys. You just, especially when you add a bunch of outfielders in a draft.
Yes, indeed. All right. So, call it a celebration podcast.
Yeah.
We do not have to endure Pedro Grifol anymore. So that's to me, that's worth celebrating. We no longer have to watch the bumblings of that gentleman in the dugout any longer. How you feeling about the state of the dugout at this moment?
Better. This is my favorite moment of the Pedro Grifol era. I mean, it was just very clearly over, and the general manager has been very clearly done with this for months. I mean, we've talked about it on this show a ton, that we thought he could do potentially more harm than good. I think I've also said, like, you look at the organization as a whole, right? It's not Pedro's fault. He's probably not even like the top of like what's wrong, but he's also bad at the job. So there's just no reason to continue, right? And the Grady Sizemore thing is fine. You have somebody in there that's going to do what the front office wants. Like we'll see how it goes. They're very clearly going outside the organization for the next manager. I think there are a couple other hires that could be coming that like would be more important than manager that I want to get into at some point. But I mean, look, manager searches are, it is what it is. I think that the most interesting thing will be like, if they hire Schumacher, everybody's just going to think Tony's in charge. So I'd almost prefer they just hire somebody we've never heard of, so I don't have to deal with that. But who, if it's Skip Schumacher, that's fine. But yeah, no, long overdue. I know you feel similar. You thought he was doing a little bit more harm than there's just no reason. There was just no reason for it anymore.
Yeah, and the thing that I've said pretty much all year long is I don't want him around any of the young guys coming up. So that was my issue with it. People were like, "Oh, what difference does it make at this point? Just let him finish out the rest of the season, let him wear the worst record in franchise history and quite possibly in baseball, modern day baseball." But the issue is that they're trying to start to try and matriculate some of this stuff up to the major league team from the minors. And if you've got that dope, but at the reins, it kind of, to me, is counterproductive. So I'm kind of happy that he's no longer around for that specific purpose. Although I do enjoy watching him wear the awful losing streaks. You know.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's just, I also like don't want a guy there that's like not invested, right? Like he knows he's not back next year. You know he's not back next year. Like, what reason does he have to like do what's best for the White Sox? Like he doesn't. Grady Sizemore like is under contract next year still. Like my guess is Grady Sizemore is on whoever the new coach, the new manager staff, somewhere because this is like what he wants to do, and he wants to hang out with Josh Barfield, and like I legitimately believe that Grady Sizemore is doing this because he wants to help players. Otherwise, he would be at home. Like he would be. The man worked for $15 an hour. That is insane. Because either he really wanted to get out of the house or he legitimately like had the itch and he wants to help guys and thinks that he can, which is cool. So yeah, I like this. This is a much better idea than what they were doing before. I don't expect the product to be like a ton better, but if you have games like the Cubs game the other night where like there's a chance to come back, or you have some offensive performances and lose 9-8 because your bullpen's still like whatever, fine. But at least it's not like the lifeless, hopefully not the lifeless 2-1 losses every day where you're just, doing that for 14 straight days, basically.
Yeah, I mean, at least you felt like the White Sox had a puncher's chance in the last couple of games against the Cubs because there seemed to be at least a little bit of energy there, whereas before it was just, zombies, more or less.
Yeah, and why wouldn't it be? And like, look, I think we heard there, there was the whole debate, right? Like Shane Reardon and Matt Spiegel both reported like the stuff out of the clubhouse, and like, look, that show's controversial. Those guys don't make stuff up, though. Like,
No.
they heard from players in the clubhouse, say, hey, this is what Pedro said, right? And Pedro even admitted it. He just said it was misinterpreted, which is whatever, fine, right? But there were players in that clubhouse that thought that Pedro, like, big time them and basically put it on them and said, oh, like, if we lose the most games ever, you're going to be the ones that it's going to be your fault. It's going to be on you, essentially. And they reported that. And then the PR arm of the White Sox, of course, like John Schriffen saying like, oh, it was taken out of context. And then they fire Pedro. So, like my thought is that, like I'm sure, and look, I don't even know if he meant it, right? But he just wasn't qualified for this job. Like, what did Pedro Grifol do well? That's what I would just ask people, because you're right. There were a lot of people that were like, oh, what does it matter? Who cares, right? No, like it matters because he's not good. So fire him. That like it doesn't have to be like any more complicated than that.
Yeah, that yeah. I'm glad we don't have to look at him anymore. I'm glad we don't have to necessarily really think about him anymore. I mean, there's still going to be a little bit of discussion about him here and there, just because of the way the season's gone and whatever. But yeah, just happy it's done and over with.
Yeah, did you see it? Did you see his statement or no?
I did not. I didn't even look at it.
He had a statement. He did not thank Chris Getz.
That I did hear.
He thanked Jerry and Kenny and Rick. I think fans, players, whatever, but not Chris Getz. And Chris Getz supposedly was one of the guys that led the charge for Pedro. And this is like one of the arguments I'm getting on Twitter, right? It's like, oh, Getz pushed for Pedro. He wanted Pedro. Okay. And then I think Getz quickly realized that like that was a terrible decision, and he changed his mind, which I think is a positive when decision makers like realize mistakes and do something about them.
Yeah, I think, I was going to actually bring this up at some point because, AJ Pierzynski came out and said, oh, whoa, saying that people were saying it was Rick Hahn's guy and Kenny Williams' guy. And he's like, I heard from many people in the organization that Chris Getz also wanted Pedro. So I found that fairly interesting. And, the fact that Pedro is not thanking Chris Getz is is an interesting one, because they're supposed to be, not necessarily, boys, but I mean, they are, supposedly supposed to be fond of each other,
Right.
I mean, I don't know, to what extent we're talking here, but something anyway. And the fact that he's not thanking him at all is kind of a weird take,
Well, so it was interesting. Like when he first got hired, there were like a lot of people that came on that were like very respectful, like, oh yeah, he's a baseball lifer, he's gonna be great. Like I knew him from Florida State, he's this, that, whatever. And then obviously, like I'm referencing like the same show again, but Danny Parkins like worked in Kansas City. And he
Mhm.
said, like, yeah, he talked to a bunch of people, and most of them were like, yeah, whatever, like he's fine. But he said there were a couple of people that he trusted that were like, no, he's a ass kisser. That were just like, he'll do brown noser, he'll do whatever he can to get to the top, say whatever he needs to anybody to get there. And I think like the longer he was here, the more I like thought about that quote that day, because I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like I'm hearing all these good things. Like I have tweets all over the internet, like excited about Pedro Grifol. Like I bought it too. Like it is what it
Yeah.
is. But I see that. Like you knew it was turning when he's praising Jerry Reinsdorf in press conferences. He knew. Like he's dead man walking. The only way he's going to keep his job is if the owner wants to like let him stay, basically. And the whole thing about like being grateful to work for an owner like this. It's like, okay, that's enough.
That
I think Chris Getz wanted to do this months. I mean, 3-22 probably is my
I mean, should have. And I mean, like you and I, we both questioned it, before the year even started. And I'm sure, a lot of the people that are listening / watching probably felt the same way, that they're like, this guy is a clown. Let's get him out of here and start this whole thing
yeah.
anew, like right now. But we all kind of figured that there was no way that money was going to be spent, and then bringing another guy in and paying another
Right,
guy.
exactly.
So
He's so cheap though. It's $1 million. Like, what are we doing? They paid for him by trading Eloy. Like, it's Larry's hardware store, man. That's how we run these things. So was there like a moment? I don't know if we talked about this because we didn't do the show together last year, but where you were like totally out. Do you remember? I remember for me. I remember
on
when it was.
Pedro,
Yeah, I remember specifically when it was for me. I was like, oh, no, no, no.
I can't think of a specific moment. I think it was kind of because I try, I was one of the people that really tried to give him the benefit of the doubt out of the gate. And, I know some people like Beefloaf was very skeptical
Oh,
of
immediately. He
Pedro.
called me out immediately and said,
Yeah.
yeah, like he
Yeah.
sniffed it
I,
out. Like,
I tried very hard to be positive about him for as long as I possibly could. And then I just I don't remember exactly when it was, but there was just a moment where,
yeah,
like I just started going,
yeah.
this guy is not, he's not
So
it.
last year, they thought they could win the division. It went poorly. The veterans
He did.
revolted. They started trading them all. So then you're very clearly in player development mode and losing basically on purpose. And Pedro played vets, and a reporter asked him why, and he said, "We will never sacrifice major league wins for development." And I was like,
Yeah.
I am out. I am out on this man because that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in a season like this.
Yeah, no, that was really dumb. I don't remember when that happened, like whether it was I was already out at that point, because I might have been.
Yeah.
But I do remember hearing that and just going, "What are you talking about? Like, what are we doing? The team's
Well,
terrible."
because I get it, right? Like it's sports. Every year, like we watch the NFL, and there's like 3 or 4 teams that we know are tanking, right? But the
Mhm.
coaches and players aren't tanking; they're professionals. Like they're going out, they're trying to win every day. That's how it should be. That's fine. That's not what I'm saying. But like you should be prioritizing the growth of like your own young players because this
Yeah,
season doesn't matter. Your next your next winning season does. That's why it's like so offensive because it's not the same thing. The wins are
yeah,
not as important as wins later, So it's just stupid. Like it doesn't make any sense.
yeah. And when you look at the roster that was here last year, you telling me that is just, I mean, is equally bad as saying it this year. Like there was no hope at that point last year, as there was pretty much all this year. Um, yeah, Poof, yeah. Can't forget about the 3-22 start. Yikes! Yeah, it's
I
just,
mean,
oh my,
I mean,
oh,
those were like our earliest pods together. And we talked about like we were like, dude, this team might start like 5-30 or something.
yeah,
Like it was like they just like can't beat anybody. And then like Robert got hurt, Moncada got hurt, Eloy got hurt, shocker, right? And it was like, oh no. Like this is The fact that they have 29 victories and they got as good a starting pitching as they have is insane.
Yep.
Like usually I'd be like, their starting pitching's pretty good. They'll win 55. This is, just nope.
Yeah,
But
they're what are they? Do you know what their run differential is at this point?
now,
I
oh
haven't
god,
looked. Yeah.
it has to be minus 150 or something.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, I imagine it's probably somewhere around 200
yeah,
would be my
I'll
guess.
look. Yeah, that's fine.
But they've gotten really, really good starting pitching. Not
Oh
all the time,
no,
but
you're
they're
so
like
far.
400.
You're so far off. It's minus 251.
Yeah, not good.
And the next worst team in baseball, the Rockies are minus 188. The Marlins are minus 161.
Oof.
And nobody else is even 100. Like the Jays are minus 91. Yeah, that's just not good.
Could you have imagined if they had worse starting pitching? They'd have like a 450 run differential at
Oh,
this
sure.
point.
Like if you had like multiple Chris Flexens in your rotation,
Yeah.
like what if I don't want to pick on a guy, but but I mean, like if you didn't have Eric Fetty and you started Chad Kuhl every 5 days or something,
I mean,
like
you
whatever.
could
Like
just say you had the Rockies starting rotation.
yeah,
If you
yeah,
had the Rockies starting
you'd be
rotation,
minus 400. Yes.
yeah. So, yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. I'm just gonna bring up a couple of things here in the chat just to bring them up because we haven't talked about them.
So
How do you feel about this part
I
here with the
I was wondering. Yeah, I wanted to bring that up.
yeah.
So I actually
Um,
disagree with him, but go ahead.
so Joe says don't give players who've yet to prove anything $50+ million.
Yeah. So do you want to talk first, or I mean,
No, go ahead. It's yeah.
I have thoughts on this because I think it matters. Like, I think the org matters, right? I think Rick Hahn got praised for those deals, and rightfully so, because I
Hmm?
think that when your owner is Jerry Reinsdorf, like if you let it play out much longer and you're right on those players, like you're going to lose them after year 6 and they're going to go somewhere else, which is why those deals are smart. Now, look, you have to pay the right guys. Like they paid the wrong guys. I think it's lazy for me to sit here and say that, like, lump all those guys together like some hosts in this city do and say, like, Moncada, Robert Jimenez got paid and like quit and they don't try anymore. Like I think a lot of people think that. I don't know that that's true. I don't know those guys, but it didn't work out. But no, I mean, I think like pre-market extensions are something that smart teams do all the time because you want to know like how much guys are making. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a terrible idea. I just think they signed a lot of the wrong players and they added the wrong players to those players and hired the wrong. I think a lot went wrong. But I actually thought that was pretty smart at the time.
I will say I'm very happy that they didn't at least go the Wander Franco route and give like $250 million to somebody. And like the crazy thing is, you look at the way the Tampa Bay Rays do their business. The fact that they gave out that extension to Franco was massive. It's like the equivalent of another team giving their guy like $450 million. So I don't know.
I
At
mean,
this point,
what the Brewers did it just in the preseason with Jackson Churio, and it's
Churio,
like
yeah,
90 mil or something, which is a
yeah,
freaking steal because that guy's awesome.
yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it's like one of those things where you just you know you're kind of taking a step of faith here that these guys are going to produce, and unfortunately, it did not work out with the White Sox. And another comment here is the Yoan stuff is a joke. The things that you hear about him and Eloy having to be wrangled in Arizona to work out, and then you hear that Yoan is potentially going to have issues, so he's like taking it easy on his rehab. I don't think it really matters because I don't think anybody really cares whether we see him again or not at this point.
Yeah.
But I will say that, the guy's getting a paycheck. He should at least, be making an effort.
I mean, for him though, don't like from his perspective, don't you think it's actually better for him to come back and play?
I
Because
would think so.
he's going to get bought out for $5 million, right? And then what kind of deal is he going to get?
Yeah, I don't know.
What if he
That's what I said.
what if he comes back and lights the world on fire in September? I mean, the Sox are still going to decline your option, and then maybe you actually get money from somebody. Like
Yeah,
I'm sure he'll get a big league deal. But I mean,
well, I mean, you saw how difficult it was for Tim Anderson to find work.
right.
And I mean, granted, I can't say that I think that Yoan looked as bad as Tim looked over the last,
Right. And I think
year, but
Moncada still has like other skills, right? Like he can
yeah,
play third, he can get on base. Yeah, I think there's other things. I think with Tim Anderson, like the issue is like he never got good enough defensively and he doesn't walk, so it's like all the hit profile. So as soon as you're like not hitting, you're literally offering like nothing.
yeah,
It's like Javi Baez, but at least Javi Baez is a good defender. Like Tim Anderson's not even a defender. Like he just is
yeah,
nothing. Like if you're not
yep.
running 300 averages, like he's basically unplayable.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Tim is he had really good range at one point. The issue with him was always you were worried whether he was going to throw the ball, into the stands or not,
Yeah.
because he would go on runs where he would do that, like 3-4 times in a week and end up costing you like, half a dozen runs in a week, which you don't generally have to worry about that with a Moncada. But, then again, you look at, somebody looking at Yoan for next year. If he doesn't come back, they could say, well, you could just look at all the other guys who left the White Sox and see what they've been doing. Clearly, it's the White Sox, and how that clubhouse was and how that team in general was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, and it's so I mean, like going forward, like I've kind of talked about I don't care what the record is, like how do you get better, that sort of thing. It's just I get tunnel vision on that sort of thing. I'm like, okay, how do we get better? Like I don't have the energy to just like argue about how bad this is every day. And like we can talk about it on the show, that's fine. Like this is our platform, right? But I'm not gonna be on Twitter like getting mad at every time the team loses. Like I don't care. So like something that happened on local radio this week was just there was a show in town who basically just said like nothing matters like as long as Jerry's there, and it's convinced that like Tony La Russa's running things anyway and like they're doomed, and I just like I don't know. I don't agree. Like they told us Chris Getz is in charge, so like that's what I'm going with, right? Like is Tony La Russa up there pulling strings? Like no. Like does he have some influence? Like is he the closest to Jerry? Yeah, right? So like is there something Chris Getz does that he disagrees with and then he tells Jerry and maybe, right? But like Tony La Russa isn't making deadline trades. He's not making draft picks in the 4th round. Like he's just, whatever. He's like every team has senior advisors laying around, right? Literally laying around. That's how I picture Tony. Like, just up in the clubhouse, laying down, like guys walking over to him. I can't go with that, man.
Kissing the ring.
Yeah. Like for years and years and years, like I was accused of defending the White Sox front office, right? Because I would blame ownership. And now people are telling me that like the front office, it doesn't matter who's in the front office because of ownership. And I'm like, whoa. This is like not what I was told when Kenny and Rick were in charge and everybody thought they were blundering every move, right? So what's the path out of this? Like I'd like to discuss a little bit. Like just like to me, obviously, like this has to be an organization that like drafts, signs, and develops some talent. And I know that's frightening for people because they haven't done it, but like they have to. They do. They have to, right? I think Chris Getz has made some really solid moves and some bad ones, right? Like Bannister gives me hope. I think there's some other stuff on the horizon that could, if it happens, like department wise. But I mean, yeah, like they're far away, but like they'll spend again eventually. You got to get it right. I think there's a path. It's not soon. That's the issue.
Yeah, well, it's not this year, that's for sure, and it's probably, I mean, the some of the improvements in the developmental side could certainly be, before next year, and we'll bring this up because this is gonna be one of those things that we are talking about, is that they need the equivalent of a Bannister on the hitting side of things, and, I don't know who that guy would be. I don't know. I don't even have like really any candidates that I would say this is the kind of guy. I mean, like, what are we gonna do? We're gonna get like, I mean, like the 2020s equivalent of like Charlie Lau, you know, to come here and start working on approaches with these guys because it's something that you look and you look through the entire system down. And we had this conversation on Twitter with somebody about Colson. Is that it seems like it's a lot of pull happy guys that are not staying through the ball a lot of the time because they're trying to pull the ball. And is that something that somebody like that's going to come in here and lay waste to that way of thinking and fix these issues? I don't know, but certainly seems like something that they need to address.
Yeah, and I think it's a top-down thing, kind of like Bannister. I mean, like the Cubs have Justin Stone, who is local. He ran a facility. I don't know how good he is. Like Justin, like whatever, right? But he sounds good every time he talks. And they just need somebody in that role that is going to be like, what types of hitters are the White Sox looking for? What are they looking to develop, right? And you do that at every single level of your org, and those are the guys that you pick up. And that's why, like, I'm optimistic about it, just because, like, we've talked about the types of guys that they've added under Getz, right? Like all three guys at the trade deadline, all of the guys they added via the draft, plus Vargas, are all guys that control the strike zone. They have walk rates. Like that seems to be what he's looking for. So if that's the type of guy, that would be great. He's mentioned it multiple times in interviews. He hasn't said like this is what I'm going to do, but he said like the hitting side is bad. Like I get it. Like this is not good enough. And if we have to discuss like going outside and bringing someone in, like that's what we'll do. He said the same thing before, and then he did it basically. So like as cool as like manager searches are, right? And people are like, you get to research all these guys you've never heard of. It's not as important as hiring your director of hitting and hiring a new international director. And it's just something that I strongly feel like has to happen and something that I think will happen. I think there's some tea leaves out there that just, I mean, you can just look at the org transactions if you want. Like all the guys, I mean, it's not good enough. It's just not. And Marco
Yeah.
Patty had some very high profile hits, and that's wonderful. But they're not getting enough out of their classes. Is that his fault? Is it Jerry's fault? I don't know. Like I can't answer. Like that's the question people ask me all the time. Like, is Jerry opposed to, you know, agreeing to deals with 14-year-olds in the Dominican Republic? I don't know. Or is it
Yeah.
just not the way Patty wanted to do business? I know that Ken Williams liked the idea of like, ooh, 20-year-old Cubans available that can help us in a year. Like, Chris Getz. I mean, look at the types of guys Chris Getz traded for. Those are the types of guys you should be signing when they're 16 years old, like out of the
Yeah.
Dominican Republic and Venezuela, right? And you should have classes full of guys. And he's very clearly understands that because he said it. He said it this week in his interview. He said we have to add players via the draft and we have to add players internationally. And he told Eric Longenhagens of the world and guys like that they're going to be changing. So those are two big things that I'm looking for this offseason that would give me solace, right? I don't know that Chris Getz is good at this job. But if he hires like a director of hitting and an international director, like I'll feel a lot better about like, thinking he might have some idea of what he's doing, like going forward.
Yeah. And I will say, um, we've talked about how we felt about the amount of return that they got back in their trades, which looks increasingly worse, judging by looking at Kopech, where he's basically turned into a lights out guy with the Dodgers, which is something that we had thought was possible, going forward. Um, After seeing that, the return might have been light, but I will say, the guys that they did pick up, they're approach at the plate and the way that they command the strike zone and the way they play defense. So far, from what I've seen, it's been a step in the right direction, in my opinion. Like will they end up hitting enough that it's going to end up mattering? I don't know. But the way that they play the game, and at least the way that they try to play the game, seems to me a step in the right direction.
For sure. And even something as small as like when I reach out to ask about Jack Caglione, right? And he would be fun, right? But like I like hearing that the general manager wanted a potential frontline starting pitcher or an up the middle player with a top 5 pick. That's like how they should be thinking.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and whereas like the old regime, it was not that. It was, can I get this first baseman that'll be here for 10 years? Right? And it's just kind of, so, Jack Caglione might be a Hall of Famer and I'll look like a moron, but like,
he might,
but I think taking up the middle players like high in the draft is like a good philosophy generally.
Yeah, I mean, if Jack Caglione ends up hitting like 600 home runs, we'll look kind of dumb. But it's kind of on the opposite side. Like I don't look at him and go, "Hey, we're missing out on Trout," because he's one dimensional. You're looking at a guy who is specifically a hitter. He provides almost nothing on the other side of the ball. He's not like Nick Kurtz where he plays a solid first base. He's okay.
Yeah.
And yes, he throws 95 miles an hour, but I don't need that at first base. And I'm
it's
not sticking him at third.
It's an exception to the rule if it happens.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about 10 years worth of data on first baseman taken like in the top 60 or whatever, so that's just.
Yeah. We've already missed on one of those. And I don't think anybody wanted to miss on another one. So, that said, Christian Moore appears to be pretty stinking good, and he might have been worth taking a shot on. But
so he seems better than the last 2 guys they've done this with.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, this guy's got Christian Moore's got like the potential to be like the highest of floors, highest of ceiling of any one of those 4 guys. Although Ben Joyce was.
Well, I think the issue is like he's going to struggle eventually, right?
Mm-hmm.
And do you want that to happen in the majors?
Yeah, that's.
I don't know. I don't know that answer. And like you've said, like we kind of talked about this last time. Like Zach Neto and Shanuel, like they're okay. Like they're solid,
they're a little bit above league average, if that. They're going to be that what you want with your first pick?
They're going to be like 2 to 3 WAR players.
Yeah,
but you're doing that in the first round. But then you're not.
Nito's 4 this year so far. So he's having a good year, but
and a lot of it's defense, But I mean, but you're not like utilizing like the rest of your draft, right? Like they still have like a bottom 3 farm system. So if you're gonna take a quick moving college guy and save a couple $1,000,000 who's gonna help your big league team, like you should be profiting like later. And they're like not. They're just taking these guys and then that's their big league team. It's very strange. And now, Angels Twitter is going to be mad at me instead of just you. But
yeah, well, that's fine. But like we were talking yesterday. They have they trade for that guy from the Phillies.
Yeah, George Clausen.
Clausen, and he had only pitched in Advanced A, and he was at like a 4.5 ERA, and then they trade for him, and then they immediately stick him in Double-A. I think he pitched like maybe a few innings for like their A-ball team. But then they send him to Double-A, and he goes there, and the Barons put up like 5 runs in 3 innings on him.
Yeah,
it's like, what are you guys doing?
Well, and that's like an ownership thing. That's like an Artie Moreno, like get the guy to. I mean, we just saw it with Edgar Caro, and we're lucky it didn't kill him. Like Edgar Caro was signed in like 21, like something crazy. He torched the A California League.
A-ball, yeah.
Yeah. And then they moved him to double as like an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And he had a tough time.
Yeah, shocker.
because of course he did, right?
Yeah.
And the White Sox, like that, I mean, that might be one of the best trades Rick Hahn's ever made if it was Rick Hahn and Ken Williams making that trade. I mean, you're going to get like a back-end lefty starter who's in the big leagues. And Carroll's been awesome, man. Like Carroll's going to
Yeah.
be a top 75 prospect in baseball everywhere. But I mean, like I even had questions like about the Sox sending him to Birmingham last year. I thought maybe they should send him back to Winston.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah,
You
I
know,
thought they
like
should have started him in Winston, but they didn't, and
no,
it
and
ended
he's
up
figured
working out anyway,
and
but
he's figured it out, and he's 21 years old or whatever. And you know, the Sox are going to have like a switch hitting regular, I think, a catcher, which is great. But I mean, the Angels would have freaking ruined that guy. Like
yeah.
he would have been done.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at, like they did have Logan O'Hoppe. Granted, he was injured all last year, before they traded him, but they had Logan O'Hoppe, and he's been good this year, and there
Yeah,
is that. So I understand why they felt that they were dealing from a spot of strength, but yeah, just their handling of the minor leagues seems a little weird,
yeah. Well, and I think it's
But
possible that their GM gets fired. So like, who's going to take that job? Like I know there's only 30 of them, right?
Rick Hahn, paging Rick Hahn.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's only 30 of them, right? But it seems like one of the prerequisites to the job is like take quick moving college guy that we can put in the big leagues immediately, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, that's do you think that that's Artie Moreno's specific,
Yes,
that's
I
a
do.
specific
Yes.
directive? Yeah,
I
okay.
think so. Yeah. Because I think he wants all of his prospects in double A because he doesn't care about the minor leagues. He doesn't pay for infrastructure. So like
Yeah,
his A ball teams are a joke. All of their top coaches, all their money, whatever, it's all spent at double and triple. So because he doesn't care about A ball. I mean, don't they have like Caden Dana or somebody
yeah,
too, like
Caden
in
Dana's
double? I
he's
know, but he's also in double, right? And he's really young, double or triple.
he is, but he did pitch pretty well in advanced day. Like, they actually sent him to advanced day, but, like, you look at, who is it? The guy who was hitting before, Christian Moore for the, Trash Pandas, I forget what round he was in, but he's drafted. He's already in double A. He's hitting
Yeah,
like 215 or something,
right.
you know? And so somebody, like one of the people that got on me on Twitter said, oh, well, it's because, their advanced day has the worst, like,
Like
minor
ballpark
league
dimensions or
hit,
something or
like,
what?
no, it wasn't like the dimensions, it was just like the hitting environment in advanced day is so bad that they don't want to send anybody to advanced day.
Mm,
And like, I'm sitting here listening to the Trash Pandas broadcast, and they're talking about how these guys who got promoted to the Trash Pandas recently, how they were hitting like 360 at advanced day,
yeah.
so it's like, clearly that's not happening.
Well, so I thought
And
it was
like,
opposite. Like, isn't that's the California League, right? Like that, those are usually inflated, like the other way. It's usually
yeah,
like Charlotte.
well, they're up in in Washington.
Okay, so no, then
So, I mean, they're part of like the Northwest League or whatever it is, but they aren't in the California part of that. They're
right.
in up in
Okay,
the Northwest. So I guess but like the thing is, like, I look at it, and like the batting averages are generally pretty good, and the pitchers are all pitching fairly well there as well. So it's like, either the guys aren't talented, like, you're not losing confidence by going to advanced day. They're just making a conscious decision to not send them there, which
yeah.
is just weird. So,
Well,
whatever.
imagine being like this is like something that the, I mean, look, the White Sox used to do this nonsense too, right? Like they brought Gordon Beckham up really quick. They've brought a lot of guys up really quick. I mean, the Angels stink. So like bringing Christian Moore up this year makes no sense. Like I don't understand it at all.
Yeah, and like that's the thing. Like, like one of like I was very respectful to everybody on there, but like I just wanted to say, like, okay, great, you guys brought up, Nito and Shanuel. I mean, it's working out really well for you guys. Those 49 wins are really impressive. Like, come on. It's like, give them a little bit of time to breathe in the minors.
Yeah.
So that way, when they come up, maybe they're a little better than just above league average. I don't know.
I think Nolan Shanuel is a terrible pick.
I thought it was bad as well. And, at least at that number, he's got he's very advanced approach.
I just
And he has,
I hate first basemen that don't hit homers.
yeah, and that's what he's going to be.
Right. Like I can't. That's just like one of my things. Like if you play first base for me, like you have to hit 30 bombs. And if you can't do that, Like I just I'm not interested.
Yeah, I'm there with you. But I'll tell you what, Angels fans are not there with us. They love their guys.
Okay, well that's
And are
fine.
willing to torch you online about it. Anywho, so what are the White Sox doing going forward here? Well, what do you think the roster is going to look like for the rest of this season?
Hopefully, a lot different than it looks right now.
So who do you think? Who do you think gets launched? I mean, are we looking? I mean, I would like to think Sheets is going to be, the guy who shares the 21 loss record with his father. I would like to think that they would at least
At least
entertain the
option him.
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, and try and move something around, and as my friend said, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, which
yeah,
yes, that is true. But at some point, like it doesn't make any sense to have some of these guys here anymore.
yeah,
So who do
yeah,
you think is gone? Is it going to be Sheets? Do you think they keep Nicky Lopez around? I mean, he's a great team guy, but what's he really doing?
yeah. It was Mrs. Lincoln. How was the play? Type of thing. Like yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I don't know. Like, does anybody get claimed on waivers? Like, I just like
not Sheets.
does somebody want? No, no, no. Sheets, you could DM. I think the biggest question with Sheets is like, to me, he's a definite non-tender in the offseason. And if that's the case, then just do it now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And
Yeah,
play Fletcher and Wright every day against righties, or Colas. Like, you could play Colas and Fletcher every day against right-handed pitching. There's no reason for Sheets to take another at bat, right? Like, if you want to do the Andrew Vaughn show again next year, like, I guess he'll stick around. But like, honestly, like, I I wouldn't go with Andrew Vaughn next year. I don't think. I just don't really see the point. I mean, you're not going to non-tender him yet because he's not expensive. But I mean, like, if somebody else wants him, I think that's an easy decision. And
oh
it's
yeah,
also a good spot where you could plug in a couple of vets. Like, you can get a couple of lefty first baseman DH types, and just whatever you want. Josh Bell, you want, like, there's a million of them. Like, I could, whoever.
let Josh Bell get picked up. He did, right?
For the end
Thought
till
he
the end
did.
of the year by Arizona, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, but no, I mean, like Lopez is decent to have around, but I mean, he's going to get non-tendered too because his ARB number is going to be like $6 million. Like, nobody's paying that. The Sox aren't paying him that. Like,
Yeah.
Lopez is the type of guy where I could really see, like, we're going to non-tender you. You're going to come back on a 2-year deal for $3 million and be our backup utility guy and mentor Colson and all these guys. I think something interesting is Vargas. Like, seems like Sizemore wants to give him some runway at third, which I think makes sense. But like, I also think Ramos could come back.
That was my
So it's
next
kind of
question, actually.
interesting. Like, what do you do there? Like, because I agree with playing Vargas at third. Like, he played there a lot in the minors. The Dodgers tried second, it didn't work. They tried the outfield, it doesn't really work. Like, you want to give him some runway at third before ultimately deciding this guy's a DH. Fine with me, right? But that means like Ramos can't really come back. And maybe he shouldn't. Maybe he should just finish the year in Charlotte and then whatever. But he's been on a tear for about a month, right? I think he's kind of like
Yep.
earned his way back.
Yeah.
And then I think the biggest questions are like on the pitching side, like, because there's an entire bullpen that you could just release tomorrow and bring up young guys if you wanted to. So I'm curious to see how quickly they start making moves like that. Like, are we really gonna just like keep going with Tukey Toussaint and some of these other guys? Like, or do you want to see some of your young relievers at some point? Obviously, like, I think Bush and Cannon are in the rotation. Do we see Adams? Do we see Eater? Do we see Iriarte? Maybe, So I hope so, because playing like all these vets for the rest of the year doesn't really make much sense.
Yeah. Yeah. First is super easy. Tell him, Wash.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, sure, you could move
I also
Ramos over
don't
to
think
first, but
I also don't think he has enough power to play first.
yeah, there is that as well. I think he's a little bit more dynamic player, but not with. I don't think we're looking at. There was a time where I thought it was possible that we could be looking at 25 to 35 home runs, but at this point, I think that's sailed a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's like 25 is looking at like probably around the top of what we would
Yeah,
hopefully be able
I
to get
think
out of
so
him.
for sure. Yeah, what do you think about Luis Robert? Like is he on the team to start next year because of like how bad he is? Because I feel like they're gonna try to trade him this offseason, but like if he doesn't play better, you're not gonna get like what you want for him. So then at that point, like it's almost better to keep him.
Yeah, that was, I was actually, this is one question that I wanted to ask you is that you had, if you had your choice going forward with like how many years of control you have and the possibility that they could completely tank or that they could go and do what, the top of what you think, who would you rather keep around next year, whether it be Crochet or Robert? Which one would you keep around?
Yeah, I would definitely keep Robert just because like I think you're gonna get a lot. You're gonna get I don't want to say enough because like I don't think that's the right way to approach it. But like you're gonna get enough for 2 years of Garrett Crochet. And like you're definitely not keeping Garrett Crochet. You're gonna suck next year. So like I just think to maximize both returns, you just might have to keep Robert because like they're like I hope they're not thinking, oh, get what you can this offseason and like save the money and get him out of here. Like that doesn't make any sense because they need to get a premium return for him. Now, I'm not on board with like keeping him the next 2 years, like on two bad teams, like just because I want to watch him play. Like I'm not, I'm
Yeah.
not that guy, but
Yeah.
you have to maximize this return. So I think the only way to do that is to wait, unless somebody gets desperate unless, if he goes off in September, I mean, maybe it happens.
Yeah. I would mean, that
But
would
he looks
be
but he
nice,
looks
but
he looks
I don't think so.
awful. Yeah, he looks terrible. Crochet, I think, definitely goes this winter. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, they'll have like the best pitcher on the market this winter.
You think this is happening? You think they're going to shut him down?
Well, so Getz said so it seems like the media like thinks so. So guys like Bruce Levine say like, oh yeah, they have to shut him down, whatever. David Haw asked Chris Getz point blank this week
Hmm.
if when did he start? Friday? If Friday would be Garrett Crochet's last start, and Chris Getz said no. So I don't know. I mean, he obviously got bombed a little bit on Friday. Like,
He did.
do you do extended rest somehow? Do you do like 7 days rest and go 4 inning? I don't know. I don't know. Like the shutdown thing doesn't really make much sense to me.
Yeah, like the full shutdown.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm there with you. But do you? I mean, and like, here's the issue with how he's been is how he's been in his attitude is that I'm a starter. Like at that point that like you have to start him. Like, are you just going to
right.
throw him out there for the first 2 innings of a game? I guess at this point, with the record of the team, does it really matter? I guess it doesn't matter. Who cares? Just
Right.
put him out there for two
To be
innings.
does it have to be every 5 days? Because it seems like that's not going that great.
Well, I mean, that's also not good for your bullpen.
No. Do you do
You
the
know,
do you do the no Schultz like treatment? Like you're pitching on Saturdays type of thing, Like because look, there's enough young guys to come up here and make the other starts. It's not like, like I always push back against six man rotations when like you have Dylan Ceases and Lucas Giolito who want 4 days rest, right? But
yeah,
right now, who cares? Like
yeah.
you could have a 7-man rotation right now, like with
Well, I mean,
somebody.
the way
Cannon
the way
pitches
they've been
whenever,
doing
Bush will
it.
pitch whenever.
Yeah, well, the way that they've been doing it in the minor leagues is everybody's been basically starting once a week anyway because they've every level's had 6 guys that start, so every guy had their day during the week, so they were all only pitching once a week anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That's it. I mean, just like a total shutdown, we don't see him again. Here's his innings load. Like, I mean, that's the way to ensure that he's like the healthiest. But yeah, I don't really love that idea. Like, if that's what they're gonna do, like, why did they pitch him so much in the beginning of the year?
Yeah, well, I mean, because they were trying to at least not lose 125 games this year. I think that's why.
Yeah.
Pedro was trying to win. Didn't
Jesus.
work out so well.
Yeah.
You got any thoughts on any of the guys that have been playing down in the minors so far since the draft?
Well, so I think it's interesting. Casey Saki went right to Winston. Um, Curious to see if like they do the same with McLean because he's similarly advanced, and you'd know more than me right now about how crowded Canny is. Like they sent a lot of the day 3 guys to Canny plus Antonacci. You'll play all the time. Wolko's
Yep.
there. You have at Asigan, whatever there.
Segan, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, no clutch. We're not doing that. We're not talking about Jacob Gonzalez. I don't want to, and you can't make me. No, but I would assume like Antonacci is going to play some second, some third, but he'll probably play every day. And then you have McCants there, you have Miller Green there, you have undrafted guys like McCarowitz is a corner guy who's there. So yeah, I just think it's interesting that there's like new players at the affiliates. It's not a new player, but I think it's hilarious that like Riku Nishida is Riku Nishida still like at Winston-Salem. It's just the same
Yeah.
dude, the same
Yeah.
exact guy.
Yeah.
Like
He's killing other teams. He's killing them. It's awesome.
like they're like, what the where the hell did this guy come from?
Yeah, I mean, I when I went to Winston, I talked to Andrew, the play-by-play guy there, and I was like, because as we were walking in, I looked down on the field and I see this little short guy, and I was like, "Is that Riku?" And he's like, "Yep," and I was like, "Oh yeah," and I was like, "You finally get him." He's like, "Well, I've been wanting him for a long time. I'm glad he's finally here," and I was like, "We've been saying the same thing. I don't know what they were waiting for." So it's nice to see that he is doing his, super annoying, just agitator stuff that he was doing with Kannapolis. Awesome to see him do it with Winston as well. While Miller Green hit his first home run today, so that was cool.
Yeah, I
It's
saw
nice to
that.
see.
For first of many, probably.
I would think so. I will say this though. I kind of am thinking maybe that we're looking at a swing rework here in the off
Yeah,
season.
yeah.
I feel like he's kind of coming across his body a little bit too much with some of these swings, but we'll see. I know.
And like I know like the McCarowitz guy like isn't a prospect, but like he put up massive numbers in the ACC. So that's a guy
Yeah,
who like if he is like a Galaney or like Caden Connor type guy, like that wouldn't be surprising. He's just old and went undrafted because he stayed in college so long.
yeah. I'm interested to see what Makarevich. I'm not entirely sure what he is at this point. Haven't seen him enough to really know what I'm looking at here yet.
Yeah,
We'll
fair.
see as we go here. I wanted to bring this up here right quick. One issue with this is that he's not on the 40 man yet, and B, I don't know. I don't know if you saw Doug yesterday that he left his game early with back tightness. We'll see how how long that affects him. I'm
Yeah,
not sure if it's a
yeah,
sit a start type thing yet or what the deal is, but I wouldn't make any plans with him at this
yeah.
particular moment.
I don't hate that idea though. Like to me, like if you are you going to protect Sean Burke this December from Rule
I
5?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think that they need to. Um,
Because if you
I
want
think
to, that's an option, right? You add him to the 40 and you just bring him up and like it is what it is. Like I'm wondering if Burke goes to he's probably an AFL candidate is my guess. I know Grant Taylor's supposedly going. A lot of times injured guys go, So, but yeah, I mean, I think he's Rule 5 eligible this year. I think he was a
yeah,
21,
he should.
right?
I'm
Yeah. So,
almost positive that he is. I don't think that we need to worry about him getting yoinked at this point in the Rule 5, just simply because he's been injured so
yeah.
much, unfortunately.
Yeah. And if there's rumors
Um,
that somebody's going to take him, maybe the White Sox just take him back because they have the first pick in the Rule 5 draft. So, I'm kidding. That's a joke.
that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
uh, Let's see here. Question. Can you explain why Caro isn't up yet? Chucky is bad. Chucky has not been good up to this point. I don't. He looks like, like we had this conversation about Sosa before, that his at bats look 100% different in the major leagues than they do when he's in the minors.
Yeah.
Chucky 100% is the exact same guy, because when you watch his at bats in when he's in Charlotte, he looks confident, doesn't look like he's, pressing and trying to do anything. Major leagues looks like he's pushing super hard.
I mean, I know even like that Baldwin play the other night, like, he didn't think that Bellinger could score from first, right? And he said that it was so loud that he didn't hear his teammates yelling to come home with the ball. But like, what is in the water in Chicago that makes these guys worse at baseball every time they come there? Because
Yeah.
like you watch more minor league baseball than anybody I know, right? And you've never said like, Brooks Baldwin's defense isn't that good. Like his awareness, like
I have
I've never,
never said that. I
I've
never
never heard
would.
any, I've never heard any of those things come out of your mouth.
No.
So like, what the hell is happening in Chicago where like these guys come up and like they forget how to play? It doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense.
It's a great question, and it's something that we've been talking about, for months now, is that, like these guys don't look anything like this at all in the minor
Yeah,
leagues. And it's like, as soon as they get to
yeah,
Chicago, it's like they don't know where the cutoff man is. They all of a sudden they can't field ground balls for unknown reasons, on
yeah.
turf that is absolutely pristine. They're not watching when the ball's coming on the edge of the infield, they're whatever. Yeah, I don't have answers for you. Doesn't make any
He
sense to
also
me
looks
either.
like 10 years younger somehow.
Who's that? Brooks Baldwin?
Yeah, yeah, no.
Oh, no, he looks like a
I know, he's always,
13-year-old.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Like, it's people think it's like somebody, like, let their kid bat,
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, their kid's pretty good then, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah, and he's been okay. Like, he needs to stay up and play and,
Yeah. No, yeah, it's
Mm,
he needs to just keep on continuing to get at bats. I
yeah,
feel very confident in his game as a baseball player. I feel very confident that he's gonna at least maintain like a decent, you know,
yeah,
plane of existence in Major League
yeah.
Baseball.
So, Chris Getz did, like, talk about Colson the other day because somebody brought him up, and, he was, still, like, pretty positive for the most part, but he made it a point to say that Colson's, like, working on some things,
Yeah.
whatever that means, right? And obviously, like, the numbers aren't good enough, but like I think the power numbers are good enough for sure. He just like there's hit tool questions. Like, I feel like every time he gets a hit, it's a double, a triple, or a homer. He's still very selective at the plate. He's had a lot of trouble with the ABS system, but there's legit questions like about bat speed and can he catch up with velocity and things along these lines. Um, I don't think that those questions really exist, but like people have brought it up. But I think the Sox are pretty sold on him playing shortstop. Um, Getz said not too far off. You don't think we see him in Carroll, right? Like they're like I would not.
I hope
Um,
not.
yeah, I would not this
At
year.
least with Montgomery, I hope not. Carroll, I mean, I think that if they were to bring him up, I don't feel that it would be a huge issue. I just don't I don't see the rush,
Well, and
you
you
know?
said it's basically the same thing you said about Mason. He doesn't need to be added. So
Yeah.
there's no reason to do so on a
Yeah,
team
not
that's
this
gonna
year,
win
you know?
40,
It's like
40 games.
what are you doing it for?
Yeah.
Like
Let
what's
him
the
finish
point?
strong in Charlotte, come into the year as one of the top catching prospects in baseball, give him the opportunity to like break with the team um next year, and it's Charlotte, whatever. So yeah, I don't really see the point adding him to the 40 man because he doesn't need to be.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't see the point. Do the Sox see a
Apparently.
psychologist? They hired
Apparently.
one.
Yeah,
They
apparently.
hired one. Whether or not it's working, that I can't tell you. But they did hire a mental skills coach. So
Yeah,
uh,
they have a sports psychologist like on staff. Ken Williams did not need a sports psychologist. You just go up and lift weights.
yeah, yeah. Um, let's see here, and then You got any thoughts here? How often are prospects good, and then stink at
Yeah,
AAA?
I think it's rare. I mean, usually you would see more struggles in Birmingham, and I do think there are people. I think Ian, I'll speak for you, that weren't totally, I guess, sold that he had accomplished everything he needed to accomplish at Double. But Colson's numbers were pretty good. It was just the first time his
Yeah.
batting average was really low. I mean, he had a WRC plus of 130 at Double A. Like he was still really good. It's just, that's the first time that like the batting average really took a dip. And then he went to the AFL and it was a little bit uneven. And then they sent to Charlotte. And I mean, to me, I was kind of like, he'll be fine in Charlotte. Everybody hits there. So I wasn't really expecting this either. So
Yeah, I think like the thing is if his bat speed to me looks fine. I don't
okay.
I don't think
So that's good then.
I don't think anything's wrong there, and I don't I know I've seen people bring up the fact that oh, he doesn't hit anything over 94 miles an hour. In AAA, you're not really seeing too many guys that throw above 94 miles an hour. Um, Really, it's like most of like these AAA guys, most of them are
Yeah. It's a lot of,
command guys and
yeah.
junk ballers and you see a couple of the relievers that'll throw a little bit higher. And I don't see, um, I don't. Part of the thing with Colson is that if a guy throws 98 miles an hour, usually they're trying to throw up in the zone. Colson doesn't swing at that stuff,
No, he doesn't.
so it's not like he's swinging and missing that stuff all that much. The thing that I have seen with him is that when guys are throwing breaking balls, it kind of you know occasionally he can look like Pedro Serrano-ish, with a curveball where like he's kind of hacking at a curveball. I think that he just needs to get a little bit more comfortable. I don't feel that it's necessarily that the talent isn't there or that he can't hit a fastball. I mean, I've seen him hit plenty of fastballs and I've seen him go pretty far.
Yeah.
And everything he generally hits really hard. Even if it's a ground ball, he'll hit it into the ground 110 miles an hour. It's like an Eloy type thing, where even if he's hitting a ground ball, it's getting hit hard.
Yeah, like to me, like I don't know. I'd be a lot more concerned personally if like he wasn't walking. Still.
He's still doing it.
And
Yeah.
I know it's frustrating, because you want him to hit, and it's like a 90 WRC plus in AAA. It's like not good enough, and it's all carried by homers and on base percentage. But I mean, look, like if Colson Montgomery is a 250 hitter with 25 homers and a bunch of walks, and he can play shortstop, I mean, he's going to be really freaking good, man. Like,
yeah, he'll make a lot of money
and
in
maybe
baseball. That's for sure.
Maybe he's not Corey Seager, but I mean, that's a 4-WAR regular. I mean, that's pretty good.
Speaking of being carried on walks and home runs, Tim Elko's looking pretty good in Charlotte.
Yeah, and my issues with him. Like I saw, I think a lot of people want to see Tim Elko.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, fine, right? But you almost have to give up on Andrew Vaughn. You want to play Tim Elko, like that's fine, right? I just my concerns are what they are. You've tried to talk me down a little bit just because of his approach, right? Like he very much thinks that he's somebody that should be driving in runs, and that's like his job, right?
Yep.
But to me, like K rate over 30%, you don't walk, you have to hit for more power than he's hit for, in my opinion. Now, he's hitting for power in Charlotte. Like maybe that was like a concerted effort at Birmingham to not play like that. But I mean, like here's if Tim Elko wants to be a 220 hitter with a ton of strikeouts and he's going to hit 35 bombs for me, like works for me, man. Works for me. I just, he did take a little bit of a step back, like in Double A. It was like, it's not a Gavin Sheets like thing, where he just like doesn't want to hit homers, but it was weird, like just the lack of them, I thought a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair. So in his time in Charlotte, he's got 5 walks and he's got 11 strikeouts in two series in 12 games. So he is taking walks.
Good.
I mean,
And if
not
he's
not a
that guy,
ton.
then let's see him. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and he's got 4 home runs in 12 games. So
Yeah, because he understands the assignment. Like,
yeah.
you were a first baseman, my friend. MASH.
Yeah, I mean, he's hitting 313 in AAA. So, you know.
And he's one of these guys who's not up there trying to like work a walk and get on base. Like if there's a guy on second, like he wants to hit a double, and that's fine. Like
Yep.
that's been his job his whole life, right? It's just, the problem you run into is when you get to the big leagues and, you're hitting 170 and you never walk and it just, whatever. But yeah, sure. Like
Yeah.
I'd be fine seeing Tim Elko. Whatever. Like at least he's fun. Like, right. So,
Yeah. That's my point is that I mean, everybody, and I know that I've seen it in the comments here are already, is that people are ready to stop seeing Andrew Vaughn.
yeah. Yeah. It's
I
not,
mean,
I don't know the answer. I mean, Jack asked, do you guys think the lack of minor league at bats messed up Vaughn? I mean, it didn't help. Like would we have realized in double, like, ooh, I don't know, like this guy's not, like, does he go all Jacob Gonzalez and double A on us? And where Andrew
entirely
Vaughn,
possible.
is hitting a bunch of singles and he's walking and he's got 9 homers, and we're like, yikes, this isn't the guy we thought. Very possibly, right? And
I
that
wanted to
happened.
bring this
That
up.
happened in the majors
Yeah.
instead.
Yeah.
Because we never saw it. And maybe he freaking destroys the minors, and
Entirely possible.
he comes up and he's still this guy, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really hard for me to judge, but I mean, I can't sit here and say that it went swimmingly like what they did. Like it doesn't.
Yes,
Also, like
James.
sticking him in the outfield corner like wasn't helpful either. I don't think
That certainly did not help his development. That did not work out well. But yeah, I this is one of the things I wanted to bring up to Angels fans that were getting on me, is that Andrew Vaughn didn't see a whole lot of minor league at bats either, and look at how that's turned out. He didn't build, possibly didn't build the mental, setup to be able to handle struggling like this, and maybe he would have done a little better with some time in the minors. But
right.
now
Like
we'll never know.
so he never got a chance to see like pretty good right-handed sliders and adjust to them. He just got to see nasty right-handed sliders like in the majors and just look like a moron up there. So
Yep.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Vaughn thing, a lot of people missed on Andrew Vaughn. And generally, like at that time of the year, I kind of trust the people that I trust. I mean, Keith Law loved him. Lots of guys similar to Keith thought, oh yeah, he can hit. Like it might only be 25 homers, but like the thing that's always been the most surprising to me is just the fact that he's not on base all the time. This was not the guy that I was sold. It seems, I kind of thought he'd be running 370 OBPs, where he'd be a doubles machine and walk a ton, and he's just not that guy at all.
Yeah, that's he is not that guy, in general. If you want to go that far. You got anything else important to speak about this week?
No, Hagen. What we saw Hagen through 2 innings in the Bridge League. Apparently, I don't know how quickly he'll get out. But I think we'll see him a little bit. At least, so that'll be good. I'd like to. I don't know. Do you pitch him in the Kannapolis playoffs? Is that unfair? Are you allowed to do that? Is like
I mean, I guess it would depend. If you were to talk to him and find out how he feels about doing something like that, if he's ready for that, I'm sure he'd say he was ready.
I don't mean for him. I mean for the other team. Like, are you allowed to do that?
Oh yeah. I mean, who cares about them?
Yeah,
Screw them.
Yeah, because he's too good for Canny.
Yeah, no, he is 100% too good for Canny. I mean, I wouldn't send him to the Barons.
That's what I mean. That's the tricky part. Is like Winston's perfect, but like they're gonna be done.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in general, I still wouldn't send him to Double A. If you get what I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have any problem with it.
So
if you want him to get some competitive at bats, go ahead and send him to Canny and see what happens.
Yeah.
I know that they would be happy because they lost out on Taylor, and with Keener going on the IL as well, I know that they're feeling a little bit of pressure because their starting pitching is has taken a step down because they lost those two guys.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I wonder how quickly. I know guys are ramping up, but Mason Moore, Sinibaldi are two starters that could go to them. It doesn't. I mean, obviously, none of the pitchers are ready because none of them are at affiliates yet. But that should be within the next week or so, I would think.
yeah. Here's a good question. Do we see Oscar Colas again?
I don't know, guys. So something that I heard this week from somebody really reliable is that it wasn't all like just a Pedro thing with Oscar Colas. Like Getz isn't like totally enamored either. So we've seen how the other Marco Patti guys have been treated. I mean, Colas is still on the 40 man. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, to me, I think it makes sense to like get him up and play him and just see, right? But I mean, if your front office like doesn't think he's any good, and there's only one guy in the building who likes him in Marco Patti, and that guy is probably on the outs too, like he might not be long for the White Sox. So I don't know.
Yeah. James Coogan, to answer your question, he asked if I think it's too early for Smith in Double-A. I do. It's not necessarily that I don't want to see him in Double-A or that he couldn't handle the competition. It's that I would like to see him get, in an ideal world, I would like to see him in Advanced A for like 3 starts.
Yeah.
The first start's always generally either go really, really well or they go really, really bad. And I'd like to see where he goes from whatever the result of the first start is.
Yep.
See which direction he goes, and then make a decision at that point.
Do you think starting in Double next year?
I mean, if they go and they, if he goes and looks phenomenal and instructs, and
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
and they decide that he's good enough that
Yeah.
let's go ahead and send him there. Sure,
Because theoretically, you could have Smith and Grant Taylor in Double-A.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like my issue with that whole thing in general is just that taking them directly from the draft, sending them to the complex league, and them getting, like 5 innings or whatever in the complex league, and then
right.
and then sending them to Double-A. To me, that just seems like
It's
a little bit
excessive.
insane.
Yeah, he should get some starts in A-ball this year for sure. Yeah, I think so too.
No,
I
mean, it's possible. I mean, think about Skeens in the Pirates system. He pitched through the entire system, and then they brought him up. They didn't rush him at all. They let him get in some innings in every single stop he was in. They didn't necessarily rush him. They brought him to where he was, and whenever he was there, he just outclassed everybody. But they made him do it at every single level.
Yeah.
Even through the Indianapolis Indians in AAA and the International League.
Yeah, and I just think Smith is like a more typical top of the rotation pitching prospect, right? Like Skeens is like a once every 25 years guy. That's like that's just these guys are just and people even say Garrett Cole and Strasburg, like he's way better than Garrett Cole was. Like when Garrett Cole first started. Now Strasburg's fair. Strasburg was a total phenom and was awesome. Like that's like Strasburg's probably the comp. But there hasn't been one since, right? So this doesn't happen that often where guys are this awesome.
It does not. Yeah. But Hagen Smith's numbers in college
they're
for
good.
K per 9 were technically better, So I mean,
and he doesn't have the Bannister cutter yet. So
he does not have that yet. So we'll see what happens there.
Alrighty, sounds good.
All right, just making sure, just cruising through these comments here, making sure that I didn't miss anything that I was going to answer. I don't see anything in particular. I'd rather see Colas play first base than Vaughn or Sheets. I mean, I don't particularly ever want to see Colas at first base, but I agree with you on that. I'd rather see him there than Vaughn or Sheets. Yeah, so thanks everybody for coming and hanging out tonight. We appreciate you guys. We are on Monday night next week, James? No? Sunday? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We are on Sunday next week at 8 o'clock. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. He is James Fox at James Fox 917. You can find all of the written content, including James' complete draft breakdown on FutureSox.net. You can find all of our written content. You can find this podcast there as well. If you are listening to this in podcast form, know that we do a stream every week on YouTube and on our Twitch as well, twitch.tv/FutureSox. If you do not follow us already, you can find all of the minor league highlights on our Twitter feed at FutureSox. And also, every day, generally every day, it's been a little weird here over the last 2 weeks, but all of the strikeouts and all of the home runs and everything all end up on YouTube in one video for hitting and one video for pitching. So feel free to check that out. We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out. And we will catch up with you guys next week. You guys have a great week, and we will see you then. Thanks. Night.